Well, first and foremost, congratulations to the Edmonton Oilers and their fans. And that includes, of course, Nora, super fan, the Connor McDavid, and the Oilers are heading back to the Stanley Cup final. They easily beat the Dallas Stars 6-3 to clinch the Western Conference title and advance to play the Florida Panthers in the championship game, which is, of course, a rematch of last year, which went 7 games. And Hyman's out, which is going to obviously hurt the Oilers. But look, when you've got a lot of grit and as they say, every team deals with injuries in the playoffs, and that's part of it. So you got to overcome that. And look, you've got the leadership of McDavid, and Skinner's playing well, and the Oilers are back in the Stanley Cup final, which is noteworthy. But this time, I really look for all those people that want to see a Stanley Cup in Canada. I'm among that group. Obviously, I'm not an Oilers fan. Never have been, not going to pretend to be, but I would certainly prefer to see the Cup in Edmonton than Florida again. And I think that in general, the season is just too long. We're going to be well into June before this thing's wrapped up, and it's hard to keep interest in hockey when the weather's great and the nights are long. And I just think that the season's far too long. But that's never going to change because of revenue, and I understand that. But again, congrats to the Edmonton Oilers. It's quite an achievement to get to the Stanley Cup final, let alone 2 years in a row. And let's hope they can get it over the top and get it done. I'd like to thank Vanessa Van Ness, of course, on the other side of the glass. The control board's doing a fine job as always. Nova Scotia Power and the privacy breach, we've talked a lot about this week, and we'll continue to talk about it today, but not with the person who I'd really like to talk about it with. Of course, that's the CEO of Nova Scotia Power, who has declined to this point to come on the show despite the fact that he's doing other media. He has declined to come on my show. Vanessa sent out a couple of emails, and I jumped on board this morning with what I would describe as I don't want to say a terse email, but an email nonetheless, looking for an explanation as to why he will not come on the show. And to this point, he has not agreed to. He interviewed with Todd with CTV yesterday. He's been on CBC radio, CBC television. And I think that it's necessary that our listeners, and our thousands of you out there, and many of you are impacted by this, deserve to hear directly from him and take questions from me on your behalf. So this is something else that we can talk about again when we open the phone lines in about an hour's time. And also defense spending. This is something that I'll be chatting later in this half hour with David Perry about. Much pressure on Canada to reach not just 2%, but 5% total of our GDP, which would be billions and billions and billions more dollars spending on defense. And of course, a lot of pressure from the United States, and now, as mentioned, from other NATO countries to get to 5%. And do you think that we should be spending that type of money on defense spending? And when in fact, when in times in which people are struggling, or there's affordability, there's a housing crisis, there's a healthcare crisis in the country, and there's lots of other places that money could be spent on, but are we left with no choice? And do we need to step up and meet our global commitments? If we want to be a G7 global player, a member of NATO, and enjoy all that goes with that, do we need to justify that with our commitment via spending? And lots of other things to get to as well. Again, I've got a number of things in the pile that we can get to, and I'll talk about some of those things when we when we open the phone lines, as mentioned, between 11 and 12. Thanks so much for tuning in and listening, everybody. We appreciate it very much. Now joining me for a chat is Claudia Chender, leader of the NDP here in Nova Scotia. Claudia, always a pleasure. Thanks for doing this today. We appreciate your time.
Always nice to talk to you.
All right, so I want to talk to you about a couple of things. First, I want to get your take on fracking and uranium and what you describe as a lack of consultation. A standing committee on natural resources and economic development met this week, and tell us about some of the things that transpired or came out of this meeting.
Well, I've called it a lack of consultation, but more importantly, communities across the province and Mi'kmaq leadership have called it a lack of consultation. So I think we talked about this a little bit when the session was on. that we had a bill kind of paving the way for uranium exploration and also for fracking, things where we've had long-standing and kind of well-researched and consented to moratoriums for a really long time in this province. And now, that bill was pushed through the legislature, contrary to many, many communities, and again, really importantly, the Mi'kmaq saying they weren't consulted. We are seeing kind of a real expediting of that exploration, and we're seeing community meetings across the province where people are coming out and saying, hold the phone. We didn't talk about this. We weren't asked. When these bans came in, there was scientific exploration, there were surveys, there were conversations with people. And now there's just this surprise rush to mineral exploration and to fracking, both of which, people are really concerned about their property rights. They're concerned about their drinking water. They're concerned about, repeating issues of the past. If we look at other big industrial projects, we've been talking this morning about the environmental racism issues in our province. If we look at things like Boat Harbor, we have the potential to repeat those mistakes if we're not bringing community into the process, if we're not taking the time to consult with scientists and health authorities and others. So I think we have a lot of Nova Scotians who are wondering why and how this is all happening and what the rush is.
Okay, when it comes to property rights, and there's some confusion, some ambiguity out there concerning this, what definitively do we know about property owners and the government and its ability to conduct exploration on their land, regardless whether they have the authority to do so or not? What can you tell us about that?
Well, what was made really clear yesterday by the minister himself is that if there is a dispute between an exploration company and a property owner, that the minister himself can order that the exploration can proceed. And he says he'll use that power sparingly, but what does that mean?
Yeah, right.
We already know that it was used once around lithium exploration not long ago. And so certainly, big parts of rural Nova Scotia, we've got farms, we've got people who love the land that they live on. They choose to live in those spaces. And as I said, at these community meetings and in conversation, we're hearing a lot of concern about that.
Yeah, and saying that they can use it sparingly means that they will use it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And so, I think one of the things they said, well, in the lithium example, there was a stalemate. Well, a stalemate just means the property owner says, no, I don't want you to explore on my land. And it would seem that, we cannot be sure that someone who owns a property has the ability to say that.
Okay, so the argument that the Premier has made here, and he's done so here in this very studio, he said that, look, for the 60 jurisdictions that are in North America that measure GDP per capita, all the states, the 50 states and the 10 provinces, that we are dead last when it comes to GDP per capita ratio, and that if we do not do something, then we are doomed to not be able to deliver services that Nova Scotians have come to rely on and require, and the future is bleak financially for this province. Therefore, this is a necessary component to turning that tide around. What's your response to that?
I agree with everything up to the therefore.
Yeah.
So, if you would look back over, the tenure of this government, you'll see that myself, our finance critic, Lisa Lachance, have constantly pressed the government around economic development. The reality is that this government spent their first term spending enormous amounts of money to fulfill a promise to fix healthcare, at which they seem to have failed. And now, when the wells are drying up because we're having, fewer folks move here and economic conditions are changing, this government does not actually have an economic development plan. So, yes, we need to turn that around in terms of those numbers. We need to address our GDP. We need to address productivity. And we have to do that in a way that is sustainable and that meets the expectations of Nova Scotians. So we have lots of opportunities in our traditional resource sectors. We have opportunities in forestry around kind of mass timber and different kind of buildings and different kinds of use for our forestry products. We have lots of opportunities in agriculture and in aquaculture where we can be supporting the output of these traditional industries. Of course, our fisheries, we can promote those fisheries in a different way. As a jurisdiction that relies and is so proud of our fishery, we do relatively little when you compare us to other global jurisdictions to promote that with the kind of power and engine of government. So there are lots of opportunities to increase our economic output, to increase the well-being of folks in our province and make sure we can deliver those essential services. But mining is one that literally came out of nowhere, and fracking in particular, it's one that has the potential to cause a lot of environmental damage. One of the things the Premier probably didn't talk about, Todd, is the amount of liability we have in this province for old mine sites. It's probably in the hundreds of millions of dollars. That's a conservative estimate. And, we have the Mining Association, the Premier just walking around saying, oh, don't worry, these things are 100% safe. We know that's not true. It can't be true. So they won't even have a real conversation with us about what this economic development opportunity is. So I don't think that he is giving Nova Scotians the credit for being intelligent people who ask questions and understand the outcomes of things. Is mining a possibility to increase economic development? Probably in some circumstances with some critical minerals that we need. Does that mean that we have to run roughshod over our constitutional consultation duties, over our relationships in this province, and over property rights immediately when, again, literally no one asked for this except for maybe the Mining Association? I think that sort of strains common sense.
Okay, let's talk about the other story that I'll read a bit of it. Nova Scotians still lack clear information about when and how they recently announced the $170 million in new federal infrastructure dollars to support housing will be allocated. At a time when people across our province are paying more for everything, Halifax Water has applied for a significant rate increase. This could increase the average household water bill by more than $300 over the next couple of years. So tell us more about this $170 infrastructure fund, first of all.
$170 million.
$170 million.
Well, listen, Todd, this is a weird story. So when the government changed in Ottawa, we sort of looked at what was on the agenda, and we wrote a letter to the Prime Minister to say, well, here are, we saw the communication that the Premier had made, and we noticed that he didn't mention infrastructure. He didn't mention pharmacare. And so those and a couple of other areas we wrote to say, I know you've heard from the Premier, but here are some things that Nova Scotians also care about. We really care about affordable housing, and we know that the federal government was busy signing infrastructure agreements province by province in the lead up to that election. So in February and March, there were announcements from, I think, 4 or 5 provinces across the country that they had received, hundreds of millions of dollars of infrastructure funding meant to enable housing construction. And radio silence from our government. And so we said, we want that money too. Like, the Premier might not be saying it, but we know Nova Scotians want and need that money, particularly, as you say, when we have utilities who are couching those rate increases in the language of the cost of extending infrastructure. So if we can subsidize that infrastructure with money from the feds, then in theory, our rates don't have to go up as much. Well, then, after pressing, the province comes out and says, actually, we authorized someone to sign that agreement in February. Wow. We're almost in June now. Yeah. We still don't have any details of that announcement. This province didn't even announce it, Todd. The feds put out a press release on a Friday afternoon, I think last week. So it's fishy, frankly. Yeah. And, if we're getting hundreds of millions of dollars from the federal government, I don't know, maybe, the Premier doesn't want the feds to get the credit. I don't know what's happening. But what I know is that Nova Scotians need affordable housing. They need it yesterday, and they need some relief from their utility bills. And this fund has the opportunity to deliver both. And so why the government won't announce it, let alone give us the information, is a problem.
So we don't know whether the money's been allocated or not at this point then. Is that what you're telling me?
We don't.
Wow.
Yeah, we have no idea.
Well, and there's no...
And the minister was up yesterday.
Sorry,
and
go
wouldn't
ahead.
answer any questions about it. We had the minister up and he wouldn't answer any questions.
So there's no mechanism that can be applied to force them to disclose this?
We can FOIPOP it.
Yeah, that's
we
it.
have.
Yeah.
It'll take a long time.
Right.
They'll act it all.
Yeah, it makes no sense. I mean, if it's $170 million, we're not talking about chump change here. Release the information. No. And by not releasing the information, it leads us to wonder why.
Exactly. And it's not the only thing. I mean, as I said, we have a panel on environmental racism that's got some dollars attached and has some important implications on the future of the mining projects and such that we're talking about. Won't release that. We've got a report on transportation. How are we going to get people around the municipality? They won't release that. Now that they have a majority government, they seem to think that transparency doesn't apply to them. And, we are taking every opportunity to remind them that it does, because they govern for the people, not for themselves.
Okay, Claudia, appreciate your time. Thanks so much, and we'll do it again.
Okay, thanks, Todd.
All right, take care. Claudia Chender, leader of the NDP. We'll be back. When representatives of NATO nations meet in The Hague late next month, they're expected to dramatically hike the alliance's defense spending target for members. The one Canada is failing to hit already. At the last NATO summit in Washington, allies lined up to called out Canada for failing to meet the alliance's defense spending target of 2% of national GDP. When Prime Minister Mark Carney attends the NATO summit next month, he'll likely be under pressure to commit to a new defense spending target of 5% under national GDP. Joining us to talk about all this is David Perry, president of the Canadian Global Affairs Institute. David, always a pleasure, my friend. Thank you.
Hey, great to talk to you again.
Wow, how the hell are we going to get to 5% when we haven't been able to get to 2%?
Well, so long as my math holds, you got to hit 2 before you can get to a number higher than that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
So I think in a lot of ways, there's both the question about the funding and exactly how much we're willing to borrow, because that's, there's been some discussion about how we would get there, how we would fund it. I think the clear answer is we would borrow the money. And then there's a whole bunch of other conversations about whether or not we can organize the public administrative capacity of the Canadian government for procurement, extra recruiting, extra maintenance functions to be able to actually start spending significant amounts of money. But getting to 5% when we're currently aspiring to spend 1.44% this year, and last year we actually spent 1.33. That's obviously a heck of a long way away and a big set of challenges for the government of Canada.
Okay, does Mark Carney, the new Prime Minister, have any runway at all with this? He could blame the previous Liberal government and the fact that Trudeau didn't make this a priority. Is that something that he gets any distance or any runway at all with his counterparts?
In one word, no.
Really?
Mr. Carney is brand new, but this is a commitment we have been failing to live up to that is now 11 years old.
Wow. All right, so what are the ramifications if we don't meet this target, or don't at least try?
Well, I think in this country, there's really, I think, been, up until the last year or so, an effort to kind of wave away this target and say, well, there's other ways of measuring how Canada contributes as an alliance partner, and we sent a lot of troops to Afghanistan, and we sent a lot of troops to the Balkans and Libya, and that's all true. But a lot of other countries did a whole bunch of those things too, number one. And then I think the other thing, the more difficult thing for the country right now, is that while there's not a one-to-one connection between whether or not you spent 2% precisely or whether or not you spent 1.9.5 and whether or not your military was capable and able to do a bunch of things, But because of years of underinvestment and underspending coming nowhere close to that target, our military right now has less ability to operate and make those kinds of contributions we used to point to as evidence of we may not be spending, but look at what we can do operationally. And we really are in a spot where only 1 and 2 pieces of equipment, planes, army vehicles, or ships is available to operate right now because we underinvested in that reinvestment we should have been making for multiple decades. And so the options to contribute operationally right now are pretty few and far between for the government over and above, like the significant contribution we've got in Latvia. But beyond that, the kitty's pretty empty. So it's really created a tough dynamic for the government to go into these discussions where our allies have more readily available operational capacity than we do proportionally, and they're hitting the spending targets. And right now we're in a space where we're doing neither.
All right. How about large infrastructure projects like this Golden Dome? Might that be that would boost that, and that would qualify, would it not, for defense spending? I would think.
Yeah. So those kinds of things would 100%. Golden Dome. I think there's a whole bunch of things we need to get through to be part of that in a meaningful way. The big thing we'd have to change first and foremost is 20 years ago, the then Paul Martin government put in place a policy that Canada wasn't going to participate in the North American portion of an American program to intercept and shoot down ballistic missiles. In that 20 years since we made that policy commitment, there's been a huge spread of that specific kind of missile technology and other kinds of missile technologies all around the world, so that particular type of missile, ballistic missile, is now even available to groups like the Houthis that don't even actually fully control even a relatively poor state with a weak military in Yemen. And in that intervening 2 decades, there's been a big change and expansion in the way countries have approached trying to defend against air threats, both missiles and drones. And so if you think about what's happened either in the Red Sea with the Houthis in Israel, with Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran, or in Ukraine with all the things that the Russians are doing, you've now got a situation where people want to set up air defenses that can provide a comprehensive and integrated set of radars and other sensors and ability to shoot things down, whether or not they're missiles or drones. And we can't really get into a discussion meaningfully about potentially joining the Golden Dome system unless we make a change to our 20-year-old policy that we are not willing to participate in the defense of Canada against ballistic missiles specifically. Interesting.
What about subs and the potential of 12 new submarines? I would think that would put us certainly in the right direction.
For sure. That would be a big ticket item. That would move a lot of money, for one, but also really inject a lot of meaningful military capability into the Canadian Navy. And I hope to see that project move forward. But one of the big steps the government has to take to do that is to actually fund that project, because right now there's been a lot of great work done to create the project documentation and define the requirements and meet with the potential suppliers. But as we have this conversation, that project doesn't have any money yet, which is a pretty fundamental part of making it move forward.
All right, and I've read that the several cabinet ministers are really avoiding the question concerning GDP and military spending, including Melanie Joly and others. Is that wise, do you think, at this point?
Well, I was kind of curious because I was at that trade show that reporting was coming from, and the defense minister gave a really good speech that was quite well received by the audience. So then to duck out and not take questions is kind of strange after doing that. But I guess the point that I would make is that NATO summit's coming up in a big hurry. They're only going to be able to duck this question, if at all, for another 3 weeks.
There you go, David. Always informative. Thanks so much, my friend. We'll do it again.
Yeah, great to chat with you as always.
All right, take care. David Perry, president of the Canadian Global Affairs Institute. Our weekly chat with Tim Powers when we come back.
Thanks.
All right, it's that time of the week. It's time for a weekly chat with Tim Powers, Summa Strategies, Abacus Data, friend of the show. And Tim, I've already been told that you're not going to be around for next week, and I'm already getting a little depressed about that.
Yeah, my son and I, Todd, we're going to Spain this afternoon he's doing a soccer clinic over there for a week, so I'm going to miss the beginning of the NHL playoffs, or they'll be on really late at night, miss talking to you, but going to have a week's break, so I'm looking forward to that.
Wow, that's awesome. Good, safe travels. How old's your son now? He's got to be 6
He's
or 7,
almost 10. He'll be 10 in August,
really?
so he's shooting up. So, yeah, they start them early, and, we're going over, so it'll be a bit of fun. Father-son bonding and resting for father, so all good.
Oh, great. So when you go away, do you detach, or do you keep plugged in to some degree?
Oh, I got to keep. When you own your own businesses, you can't ever get too far away from them. And I like to know what's going on, but I don't have to worry about it on an hour-by-hour basis. Yep. So I've got you for that. When I come back next Friday, or the Friday after, you'll have everything for me.
All right. So you run a polling company, you run a consulting company, you you make beer, you have a radio show, you do numerous media hits. How do you get the energy, bud?
I don't know. I'm just dumb. I run. I guess it's keeping relatively fit that does it. And having a 9-year-old makes you busy all the time. So that's what I do. I just try to stay active and enjoy life as best I can, and have chats with you. You keep me young too, because we're about the same age. So if we can convince each other that we're still young, we're on track, buddy.
Sure. Sounds good. All right, let's talk a bit about what happened in Ottawa this week with all the hoopla that was the King, and they rolled out the red carpet and then some. I mean, as regal as you could get, right? This event.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think on the whole, it was a good showing by Canada of the opportunity to host the King. I mean, the market thing's the funniest, right? Because we actually do usually have a stall or stand at that market, but that market is never open on Mondays. That was all created, and as Shannon Proud for the Globe and Mail columnist described it, Canada created a perfect play for Canada, so for the King. So he got some maple syrup. He got to meet Chris Phillips, Ottawa Senator. He got to listen to some music and meet some kids from one of the great orchestras in town, and people were generally enthusiastic to be there, and there were crowds for his parade up Wellington Street to give the speech from the throne. And I think there was a genuine enthusiasm for him and Camilla, which is really fascinating, Todd, because you and I are old enough to remember when, 20 odd years ago, or a little longer than that now, and almost 30 years ago when Diana died, the royal family was not very popular. And his mother turned it around, and people began to have a greater appreciation for her, and they've even grown affection for him, as was evident while he was here in Canada.
Yeah, almost to the point of deification of this guy. I mean, it really almost felt like worship, literally, of him. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, I think, particularly in Eastern Canada, with some exceptions in Quebec, we've always had a greater maybe appreciation of the Royals. I don't quite know why, but I know in Newfoundland, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, PEI, here in Ontario, this part of Ontario where I am anyway, they're generally well liked. I think they're seen here as, important figures in our history. And what Charles said, it was his 20th official visit, so he's been here a lot. It's not like he's a stranger. And I think we needed the little injection in the arm that King Charles and Queen Camilla's visit gave, making us feel like, oh yeah, Britain does actually have our back, and they do like us. And sometimes you need a little bit of stroking. It's like you Leaf fans. Yeah. Sometimes you need to say, yeah, they're okay. They're okay.
There you go. All right. Well, that's all well and good, but how far does it go to actually tangibly changing anything of the economic reality that is tariffs in the U.S. and all that? Does it change anything tangibly, or is it impossible to measure that?
It's impossible to measure that, but Trump is so strange, right? We're going down memory lane here this morning, so I hope the listeners like it. But you and I and a bunch of the listeners remember the Robin Leach show, Lives of the Rich and Famous. Well, Donald Trump really was a central character in that show, and he likes that circle of people. So the fact that Mark Carney could get the king to come over and deliver a speech from the throne, and the president has already expressed his admiration for Charles and the Royals on numerous times. At some level, probably in Trump's mind, and if we can ever figure out how it works, says, oh, yeah, this guy Carney, he's got a bit of juice. So that's what it does, if it does do that. And it helps Carney as he tries to position Canada differently than Justin Trudeau did, and as a more of a player on the international stage. Does it change anything tangibly? No, but maybe it helps in the relationship book. Although what was only a matter of hours after Charles leaving, Trump was tweeting again about the 51st state and the Golden Dome and all the other nonsense he usually gets on with.
All right, then, of course, question period. Mark Carney took his first question and really didn't stick around in the House very long, kind of bailed pretty quickly. What are your thoughts on his performance so far, I guess?
I only saw the clips of it, but no surprise there. I mean, I don't think you're going to see the same sort of rhetorical flights you would see from, say, Justin Trudeau or even Tom Mulcair and others in opposition. I think Carney will probably view question period as a necessary evil, and will go according to how it's playing out for him. And I don't think anybody really is going to get too fixated on question period until somebody like Poilievre returns to the House. It's all. I would say, Todd, we're still in a built-in, buffer period over the next number of months, and the real stuff in the House of Parliament will happen in the fall after people have a bit of time to rest. Poilievre comes back in, if he comes back in at that time, and there's been some distance between now and the election, and people can see whether Carney's bold agenda, as he describes it, that is supposed to have a lot of pieces in play by July 1st, has been met.
Okay, it's got to be really, really difficult for Pierre Poilievre to be on the outside looking in here and remain relevant, Tim. This is a serious issue for him, I would think. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, look, I think remember Jack Layton for a long time would before he got into the House would do that. We would hang around in the lobby because he could. But yeah, I think Poilievre is missing the cut and thrust of it and the opportunity to go up. And it reminds people who watch this stuff when they don't see him that he did lose. And you're seeing a little bit of a narrative be pushed out there by the Liberals right now about, the Conservatives have a leader problem, and the Conservatives really aren't pushing back on that much at the moment. So when you're sitting on the sidelines and you want to be on the ice or on the field, it isn't much fun. And maybe it helps Poilievre figure out some of the things he needs to work on. It's not hurting the Conservative Party right now because, again, we're just right after the election and there's so many other things happening at the moment. Nobody is saying, this is a death knell for the Conservatives not having Poilievre there. So the only one that's probably irritating is Pierre himself.
Yeah, for sure. What about Andrew Scheer and his performance, and what are you expecting from him?
Not much.
No.
I mean, look, he's there because he's a safe bet for Poilievre. He's not somebody who's going to, as I think I said to you before, going to do the Rana Ambrose and steal the spotlight away from somebody who wants to be the permanent leader. The Conservatives didn't want another Rana Ambrose figure because there's inherent jealousies in politics. So the safe bet is the guy who the public's already rendered a verdict on, Andrew Scheer, who, knows his way around the House of Commons, doesn't aspire to be leader again. So, if you can name the top 3 parliamentary highlights of Andrew Scheer after July 1st, I will give you 10 cases of beer because you'd be the only person who could.
Yeah, for sure. What about the NDP and their relevance, or irrelevance, I should say, at this point?
Starting to show, eh?
Yeah.
Like Don Davies, the interim leader, tried to get in on things. They don't have regular questions in question period. I mean, they had a large influence in the last parliament, and they're a bit they're a bit lost. I mean, I'm not going to say they're dead. You'll remember, your listeners will remember, Alexa McDonough went through a period like this after the 1993 election, when I think she took over the Liberal Party the NDP Party, and it didn't have official status. It's just tough. It's just tough for them, and they're really going to have to fight to have anybody pay attention to them for the next little while.
Okay, so a two-party country, is that some suggest that that's not a good thing. We see what the perils of that can be in the United States. What are your thoughts on us as a country being basically a two-party country?
Well, we're not really, if you count the bloc, right?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Part of Quebec. I think the NDP, as they have done, will show their resilience and find their way back. But as they did in 1993, I mean, they were official opposition 8 years later, right, in 2011. And Justin Trudeau was third party in 2011, and they were government in 2015. And in both cases, both entities were written off. And that's a silly thing to do, because as we've seen in Canadian political history, we like a more competitive landscape, which means more parties. So while you may lose one game badly, doesn't mean you're gone forever.
All right, Tim, safe travels. Don't be gone forever, bud. Come back.
I won't be gone forever. And Todd, by the time we come back, the Florida Panthers could be Stanley Cup champions.
There you go. Thanks, pal.
Take care. Bye.
Okay, you got a Tim Power, Summa Strategies, Abacus Data, friend of the show. Canada's food system campaign launched to celebrate innovation, economic strength, and national unity. We'll get all the details when we come back.
Facts.
Canada's Food System, Our Food, Our Future campaign, a pivotal nationwide initiative that celebrates one of the country's greatest strengths, the people, partnerships, and progress that make our food system a global leader. Joining us to discuss all of this is Lisa Bishop-Spencer, Executive Director of the Canadian Centre for Food Integrity. Lisa, thanks for joining the show.
Thanks for having me.
You got it. So tell us more about the Canadian Centre for Food Integrity. What are you guys all about?
The Canadian Centre for Food Integrity works at the intersection of the Canadians and the food system. So what we do is we do one of Canada's longest running research studies to determine how people are feeling about Canada's food system and the elements behind it. And then we work with the food system in order to make sure that those concerns are being addressed.
All right, so very interesting, the news release on our food and how far-reaching it is. And look, it's something that we do every day. We eat, but I don't think we put a lot of thought into food and how its impact on the economy and all the tentacles that it has in this country and how integral it is to the economy and to sustainability. There's a lot of layers to this, obviously, right?
Absolutely. What's interesting that we know is that 1 in 9 Canadian jobs depends on the food system, and that the food system contributes $140 billion to GDP. The other thing that people don't know is when they think of manufacturing, people tend to think of cars, but Canada's food and beverage manufacturing sector is the country's largest manufacturing sector.
Wow. And to that, sustainability and trade and all that goes with it, and tariffs are impacted by we know that canola and China and what's happening with other jurisdictions. Tariffs must be a top concern right now, I would think.
Absolutely. So what we've seen in the last, I would say, 6 months or so is a bit of a transformation. Canadians had begun to become more and more indifferent to the food system, but we've seen a bit of a shift in the last 6 or so months, probably due to tariffs, a little bit due to sort of that anti-Canadian rhetoric that we've been hearing, and we've seen a real surge in national pride. Canadians still value the food system as part of our national identity, but now we're seeing more and more of that starting to manifest itself. So we thought it was a really good time for us to share that unified, honest story about how the food system works, why it matters, and who's behind it.
All right. How much when it comes to markets, is more of our food exported than consumed domestically, or what's that ratio like?
Most of our food is consumed domestically, but the export markets are extremely important for us. We're Canada's 5th largest agri-food exporter globally.
What leads the way when it comes to exports?
That's a good question. Certainly I know that our grain sector and others are very important, but I think really it's more of a full picture scale that we need to understand, right? We know that we're in a situation where, there are programs and systems in place, particularly even in Nova Scotia, that help sort of food businesses adopt new technologies. And what I think people don't really know is just how innovative the sector really is. People tend to think of food and think of farming in a more quaint perspective than really as the hub of innovation that it really is.
Right, and the amount of partners that are involved, including the transportation network, which is massive, and we know that when we had a rail stoppage or a threat of that a couple of years ago now, and we get ports and we get air, and so there's a lot of reliance here on a lot of things happening.
Absolutely. People don't understand necessarily, or need to understand a little bit more about the interconnection of the food system, right? It starts before the gate, the farm gate, and it goes beyond the plate that we eat on. So we need to do a better job as a system to share those stories and show Canadians that it's one that's worth understanding and supporting.
How about affordability? That's something that is paramount and top of mind these days. What about affordability and the food industry and the agri-food industry?
Absolutely. 51% of Canadians are very concerned about food affordability. And in Nova Scotia, that concern is amplified. In fact, the province leads the country in food insecurity, with 3 in 10 households struggling to afford enough food. But there's a moment here. So with the right focus on innovation and collaboration, we can show how the system is responding, how it's managing costs, improving supply chains, and helping support local solutions.
Okay, how is it responding? What are some of those improvements?
Well, with respect to some of those improvements, you've seen right now plant science innovations contributing $3.5 billion to the GDP before a single seed is planted. Crop science drives lots of farm gate revenue and strengthens the economic backbone of rural Canada, which allows them to support their communities. I think what we need to understand, though, is that consumers see innovation with a little bit of, I would say, fear when it comes to the food system. They don't like it when they hear terms like cutting edge or innovation in the food system. So what we have to do is show that we are working in ways that are safe and affordable and provide sustainable options, supporting local communities and supporting local producers as well.
And when it comes to the future and growth and potential for growth, where are we? What we've not obviously not maximized our potential here. I'm sure that there's lots more to go.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the innovation again in the sector is quite staggering. I think people need to we all really need to work to sort of communicate that even in the face of things like climate volatility, global disruptions, trade pressures, we're continuing to deliver quietly, reliably, and innovatively. I just think that people need to understand sort of that, with over 90% of Canadian farms being family owned, families are using innovation not to industrialize their work, but to preserve it. So greenhouses, for instance, are now allowing us to have access to food that we might not otherwise have access to in a cold February. Or a new logistics system or transportation system doesn't take away from having local food, but it helps reach the table fresher and with fewer emissions.
And it's going to ask you about farmers, of course, and mental health, because we know that this has been a story and much neglected over the years, and the well-being of farmers in general is something that is part of the story as well. I'm sure you'd agree with that.
Absolutely. We're very supportive of initiatives that help farmers in terms of their ability to cope with all of these disruptions, right? This whole trade situation is an enormous stressor. So we want to make sure that farmers have those resources, and those resources are available from their local associations as well as national associations.
Okay, and if people want to know more about all of this, they can check it out at your website, I'm assuming?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a website for the initiative called canadasfoodsystem.ca, and people can go there and sign a pledge that just says, I support the Canadian food system, and allows our people to see that there is a lot of support. And we know there is, and we're hoping that we're going to be able to communicate more about what we do and how we do it. It's a moment for us to be able to really focus on the foundation that we have and communicate to people that the system is really important and they need to pay attention.
Good chat, Lisa. Thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right, take care. Lisa Bishop-Spencer, Executive Director of the Canadian Centre for Food Integrity. Now we've got some time for you. What is on your mind today? Again, the way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Perhaps it's something you've heard on the show throughout the week or this morning that you'd like to weigh in on, or perhaps something that you have not heard on the show that you think you should have, or perhaps you've agreed with something or disagreed with something. Whatever it is, give us a call at 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Your calls when we come back.
Facts.
All right, time to take your calls. The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Give us a buzz. Again, 902-405-6000. Get some open lines for you. Give us a ring. If you'd like to have your say, now's an opportunity for you to do so. 902-405-6000. Nova Scotia Power CEO says up to 140,000 social insurance numbers could have been stolen by cyber thieves who recently hacked into the utility's customer records. Peter Gregg says the utility collected the numbers from customers to authenticate their identities. He says social insurance numbers were about half of the 280,000 customer records breached by cyber criminals and released onto the dark web. And this is obviously very, very concerning for everybody involved and anybody who's received a letter. And I would suggest that even if you didn't receive a letter, I would still have concerns. Because who knows how... Is it possible that the breach exceeded what was reported? I think that's possible. Now, that all said, folks, Peter Gregg, who's quoted in the story, has done some media interviews in the city. He's gone on with CBC Television. He's been on CBC Radio. Went on Todd Battison TTV yesterday. And that's great that he's afforded and accommodated those people. But to this point, they have declined an interview with us. Vanessa has sent out a couple or two or three at least requests, and the last response that Vanessa's a very nice human being, very, very nice person, and very tactful, and responded in a way that is in accordance with her personality, saying thanks so much, and anytime he's ready or whatever, the thing that you would expect somebody to do in a professional environment like she's in. And I said, look, I want to CC me in on the email, and I'm going to send my own version of what I think is going on. And it was much less polite and much more direct and much more terse. Call it good cop, bad cop. But it's basically saying, look, Nova Scotia Power, Peter Gregg, step up and do the show and face the music and talk to me and let me ask you some tough questions and let our audience, thousands of people listening out there right now, hear what you have to say. And be transparent, and I will not back down from that until I get an interview one-on-one with Peter Gregg. And the fact that you won't, if you don't come on the show, I think speaks volumes. 902-405-6000. By the way, Peter Gregg, if you're listening right now or somebody's listening, you could call anytime. We'll put you on anytime, including right now. Because I have a lot of questions. First of all, what are you doing? What have you done? How much money are you investing in your cybersecurity compared to before this breach and now? And why were you not up to par before this breach? And obviously you weren't because it happened. So what have you been doing when it comes to investment in cybersecurity, and what are you doing now in order to fix the problem? And what are your long-term plans? How much money are you diverting from operations into this? Because you're asking for and you're demanding our information in order to do business with you. That's a contract. And part of that contract is a realistic expectation that you're going to do all you can to protect that information of mine in response, or the conversely, I get power. That's a contract. And if you are not set up and equipped to properly guard my information, then you're not qualified to deliver on that contract. I want to know, how much are you investing in cybersecurity? And how are you determining whose information has been compromised, who hasn't? Who tipped you off? How did this get on your radar in the first place? And I want to know more about the timeline. And I think Nova Scotians want to know all these same things. Might there be a class action lawsuit? I don't know. We're going to talk to Wayne McKay about this. I'm receiving emails from people who are suggesting that a class action lawsuit might be in the works. I don't know if that's constitutionally available or the law allows that type of thing. I don't know, but we'll talk to Wayne McKay about that on Monday, the legality of it. But anyway, are you impacted by this? And are you frustrated by this? And are you now concerned about your identity and your finances and is monitoring credit and going on TransUnion and looking at your bank account, online banking 5-6 times a day? Is that the new reality that we're forced to live in here? Is this a wake-up call? And should we be doing that anyway? Because look, how many organizations out there have your financial information? And there are many. You go down the list. And I would bet that most of them, unfortunately, are ill-equipped to defend that information. They're quick to take it. They're quick to debit your account and take money from you, but they're not quick to provide the safeguards that is required to properly safeguard your information. 902-405-6000. Let's go to the phones. Ray, hello.
Yes, good morning. I look at it a different way. The Nova Scotia Power Corporation, what they should have did was passed all the names of their customers to the monitoring credit companies and then sent out letters and said, we have been breached, and here's a reference number for you to check future reference up to 5 years. I don't know why they would left it to me. They're the one that the breach was done to. Why should I have to work hard to do all the monitoring and things and do the end?
Well, I think that's a privacy issue. It requires you, in order to give TransUnion your information. They can't just pass along your information to somebody else, for goodness sakes. They can't. That's not going to work.
Well, that was my point of view anyway, but I just thought maybe they should have took the initiative and did it themselves.
No, I get that. I get that, Ray, but I'm saying they can't, on your behalf, contact TransUnion and give them more information. That would be even another breach.
Well, anyway, have a nice day.
Okay, take care. 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Sharon's giving us a call. Hello, Sharon.
Hi, good morning.
Good morning.
I just wondered, and I don't know a whole lot about anything, but I just wonder if it seems like Tim Houston took it upon himself to take the uranium, the critical mineral, the uranium ban off so he can start mining uranium in Nova Scotia, which is, I think it's mining uranium is the most poisonous, produces the most poisonous byproducts of anything mining on Earth.
Where do you get that data from, Sharon?
I read it on the CBC.
Well, okay, just because you read it on CBC doesn't mean it's true, right? There's always
okay.
There's always, and I'm not downplaying your concerns,
Yeah.
but that said, people get information and they see it and they take that as the only information. And there's always two sides to every story, right? And then sometimes more than that. So if you talk to industry and you talk to those who are supporting uranium mining, they will tell you that there's been large advancements when it comes to mining, and it's not what it once was. The industry's evolved, and it's much safer now than it used to be. And they'll tell you that safeguards can be applied. Now, that said, you've got groups and organizations that'll deny that and refute that and dispute that and tell you the opposite. So at some point, Sharon, we in the public get stuck in the middle, and we have to make a decision based on the best information that we have.
Okay, and I just wonder why also that they just had a meeting. I know they had meetings all over the place, but just in East Dalhousie, they had the meeting I think on Tuesday, and they have to have their proposals in by the 11th of June. That's only like less 14 days or something. Is that common for them to give them such little time to try to do anything to stop it?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what the legislation allows for as the timeline goes, Sharon, so I can't speak educational in an educated manner on that, so I can't answer that question. But I do know this, Sharon, that the opposition and those who oppose this have said that there's been absolutely no consultation and a complete lack of consultation whatsoever concerning these decisions, including First Nations communities, have said the same thing.
Yes.
Okay, Sharon, thanks for the call. Take care.
Okay,
All right.
thank you.
All right, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Dave, hello.
Yes, good morning, Todd.
Good morning.
Just with the cyber breach here, Nova Scotia Power, I think we have to realize we're living in a digital world today. And this is probably not an uncommon thing. We saw what happened in Spain and Portugal with their grid, electrical grid that went down, and they still can't explain what happened. Somebody could have hacked in there. And if it has been hacked, it's probably not in good hands, the information that was stolen. It's in the bad guy's hands, correct?
Yeah, I would
and,
say so.
Yeah, of course it is probably. And what bothers me is the social insurance number. Like, how in the heck? That's like a passport in some ways. Your social insurance number, government knows all about us with that number. So I'm thinking, but again, we're living in the time where, even with social media, we've all been hacked in all likelihood, whether it's your profile. I've had people that say, look, I've been hacked. This is not me, So somebody takes your information and whatever and just hope for the best. But this is just the world we're living in today. Is it preventable? Probably to a certain degree, Todd, but it could happen time and time again. This is nothing new. And it's going to be the next warfare, in my opinion. I'm sure countries have the capability of shutting down pipelines, which happened down on the East Coast there. Again, there's never really an explanation to why these things happen, but it's probably a tactic that the enemy can use, for sure. But having said that, talking about our defense, do you mind if I talk about the defense budget?
Yeah, go ahead.
Or lack of it. So I went on the government website here. This is our government website, and I'm looking at all the equipment that we have passed over to Ukraine. I think it's committed to be $19.5 billion. Whether it's all going into some of it's training. You were in the military. They're over in Poland and Latvia. They're training Ukrainians to operate this equipment. I know people over there and what have you. So that's a big expense. We have got armored vehicles on the ground in Ukraine, of which are Leopard 2 tanks, battlefield tanks. I don't know what the cost of those are, Todd, but they're probably fairly expensive, I would say.
Pretty expensive.
Many armored vehicles we've handed over. I don't know if they're Humvees, but there's dozens that they have that they've sent over. So we have committed. And the way this world is turning, and honestly, I think Putin may be off his rocker. I think he there was a nice prisoner exchange there. I think you heard that recently, and it sounded pretty warm and good. Maybe they're going in the right direction. And then he continues to fire missiles, I think, into Kyiv. So I don't know where he's coming from. But what worries me is I think because Canada and Carney, a globalist, and we're going to commit to Europe because we're part of NATO, I don't see Trump putting any boots on the ground there. He doesn't need bloodshed. He doesn't need his soldiers in there. But he wants those rare earth minerals. That's the only way he'll have boots on the ground there is mining and protection for that if that deal goes through. But I have a feeling that we and Europe may have boots on the ground in Ukraine before we know it, because this is a war that is not receding in the least. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Putin doesn't seem interested in talking peace. We don't know what goes on, Zelensky, what have you, with Ukraine. So it's a worrisome situation, and I wouldn't be surprised Canada, and it's very possible, and I hope to God not, that Europe and Canada doesn't put even peacekeepers over there. How can we be considered a peacekeeper if we've been financing a war and giving arms to Ukraine and ammunition and everything else? So, yeah, it's could get very ugly in a hurry, if in my opinion. And we need to spend more for our own country, our own defenses. I mean, if Putin is indeed off his rocker, we got our north, we know what's up there, and countries, China is pretty determined to take Taiwan. That's a fact, and the world is churning. So I think we're going to have to up our defense mechanisms greatly. And I have no problem with that when it comes to, but when we're handing it away like we are right now, I'm not too sure. Are we going to put it this way, Todd? Are we going to see those Leopard 2 tanks back? I don't think so. I think they're gone forever. Yeah. They could be in Russian hands by the end of this whole thing.
Okay. Who knows? Okay, Dave. Thanks for your comments. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Todd.
All right. Take care. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Nicole's giving us a call. Hello, Nicole.
Hi, Todd. How are you?
I'm well, you?
Good. I just want to pull on the comment that you made about Nova Scotia Power and the contract between them and their customers.
Yep.
This is something I've been pulling on for over 2 years. If you call Nova Scotia Power and you ask for them to provide you a copy of your electrical services contract, they will tell you it does not exist.
Wow.
They don't have one. And not only do they not have one, under Regulation 2.2 through the UARB, they're not required to provide you with one. Now, to make matters worse, if you go to create an account with Nova Scotia Power, you just put in your information. At no point do you click, I agree to the terms and conditions of this contract, or do you click that you agree to their privacy policy. In a ruling from the UARB that I received, they agreed that that doesn't happen. So my question ultimately lies with Nova Scotia Power. Do you even have lawful right to be holding the information you just breached? Because in the absence of a contract that you can show to your customers, you are contracting, it's called a contract of adhesion. And it's an unlawful, it's kind of lawful, unfortunately, but there's significant Canadian precedent that shows that, especially when you have a monopolized company like that, you can't put your customers up against the wall and hold them to a contract that not only did they not have all the terms and conditions of, and could not have the capacity to sign because they didn't have those terms and conditions. And even so, you can't do it on the website. But even if you call in, I guarantee you none of those call center representatives are reading you the pages and pages and pages of conditions that are on the website before you say, yes, please connect. So when you're talking about a class action, I'd be really curious to know what the lawyers will be fighting, because there's no contract. And in fact, I would urge every single person who received a letter to contact Nova Scotia Power right now and ask for a copy of your contract, and not just a copy of your contract, but the documentation where you explicitly consented to their terms and conditions and their privacy policy, because that's a big problem for Nova Scotia Power if they cannot produce it.
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's very, and yeah, so at no point is there anywhere, and I hadn't thought of that, but I guess there would be, I don't know if the legality would say that a contract is inherent because they've agreed, like what by us entering into this contract with them, which is an arrangement to provide power, we give them our information and our banking information. That inherently is a contract, I suppose. Is it? Would it not be?
It is, but it's a contract absent of terms and conditions.
Right.
So it's not in good. It's not a good faith contract. Yep. And even her name's Kathleen McManus. She was one of the board members of the formerly UARB. Explicitly said in the decision that I received, if you go and form a contract with them, that information is absent and not even connected to the initiation of a contract.
Whoa.
But yet, because Regulation 2.2 says that Nova Scotia Power may give you a contract, but they're not required to, and you have to know as the customer that it's your right to ask for them to even create one in the first place, there's no contract and they won't do it retroactively. Even their dispute resolution officer at Nova Scotia Power will say, like, if you didn't ask for one, then we are not obligated to give you one.
Well, I wonder if huge problem. Nicole, I wonder, that must be by design, I would think, on their behalf.
Well, it has to do with whatever agreement is happening right now between Nova Scotia Power and the UARB. And the problem with the UARB is that they're the quasi-judicial tribunal. They sit outside of the court system. The legislature can't touch them. They're under the purview of the Executive Council, and the administrative oversight ultimately falls to the Executive Council at this point with the UARB. And I think it's Section 84 of the Public Utility Act basically binds your hands as a citizen as to how you have to take action against Nova Scotia Power. So you have to go through the Nova Scotia Power dispute resolution. If you don't get a satisfactory answer there, then you have to go to the UARB. If you don't get a satisfaction there, then you have to go to the Nova Scotia courts. But even if the UARB deems that you have a valid case and they're going to move forward and investigate, well, then I think you have to have up to 5 people if you're a resident, 3 people if you're a corporation. You have to pay all the costs up front, which you may or may not be reimbursed for. So this is the problem with the contract, because as a customer, you have little to no legal recourse against Nova Scotia Power because of these regulations inside of the UARB, which Section 2.2 does not stand up against Canadian legal contracting practices because Nova Scotia Power is not required or required to give you a contract. And the dispute resolution officer at one point told me regarding the contract that, oh shoot, I forgot. Oh, I'm sorry, I lost it.
It's okay.
It's a cluster. It's such a mess. It's such a mess, and everybody's really upset about the cybersecurity, and I get it. I had my information stolen by the federal government when my student loan information walked out the door on a thumb drive. This is a big problem, but their contracting practices are just completely unconscionable, and this should not be able to go on. And it's being upheld by the Executive Council and the UARB.
Very interesting, Nicole, amount of time. But look, you've obviously done a lot of research and you're very well versed. And I think you raised some excellent points. And I'm going to talk about some of these exact points when Wayne McKay's on the show, Law Professor Emeritus on Monday. Thank you so much, Nicole.
Thank you.
Okay, take care. All right, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls, 902-405-6000. That is the way to get in on the action. Again, 902-405-6000. Bob, good morning.
Hi, good morning, Todd.
Hi there.
Once this breach had been realised by Nova Scotia Power, they had 2 options. One, they could pay the ransom money at their cost, but the other option was to leave it to the clients, to the customers. So they decided to protect the company at no cost to them and pass the cost of what's gone on onto the clients, onto almost 250,000 accounts. So, it doesn't show any integrity. It doesn't show any sympathy. It doesn't show any understanding of what everybody's going through right now. They just chose to protect themselves rather than the clients. And it wasn't our fault. It was their fault. They're at fault in this.
Yeah, listen, they say that they were advised by whomever was advising them to not pay it, and what went into that decision? That's something that I think Peter Gregg should be answering. Why not pay the ransom, and why were you? Who advised you not to? And what were the results if you did pay it? Now, perhaps by paying it, that doesn't protect your information, because maybe, look, you're not dealing with with an organization or a group of people that are ethical. So I don't know what paying it would have done. Maybe paying the ransom wouldn't have protected our information. I don't know, but these are questions that I think should be addressed, Bob.
Yeah, if they paid the ransom, or if they refused to pay the ransom, then the hackers would find out that they would have no game plan. If nobody pays, then there's nothing in it for them. But if they don't release the information, then they make it an option for companies to protect their clients.
Well, I guess, Bob, how would you know, though, whether they've released the information or not, right? You could give them the money and they could release it anyway. And this is something that perhaps security experts who we could get on the show could educate me on this. I don't know, because, like I said, you're dealing with a group that are hackers, and I don't know how they communicate and how the ransom is issued or what. I don't know how this all works. It's very mysterious and very murky and all that. So I don't know that paying ransom would translate into our identity being protected anyway. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't, Bob. I don't know that.
Yeah, well, it's been going on in the UK. Marks and Spencer's and other big stores have been in the same situation. But if they pay the ransom and then the hackers put the information out anyway, that kills the game plan. Nobody would ever pay them again.
Yeah.
But the other part about it is, it's the neglect. They've not done anything advisory as what we should be doing.
Yeah.
But the smartest thing that we can do, other than get our name down on that, what is it, true whatever they call it, put our names down on that. But the other thing is, go to your bank if you've got a lot of money in the bank and change your bank account. Take your money out of your bank that you're existing with now and put it in another bank, and a lot of people have been doing that. It doesn't stop your credit card being ripped off, but if it's a cash in the bank that you want to make sure it doesn't get stolen by the hackers, then change it from, let's say, as I've done, from RBC, went in there, and it took me 10 days to arrange to get the money out from RBC and to put it in with Toronto Dominion. And there's no way that they can trace where my money is now. And that's what people should do. It's compromised to the bank accounts that we have. Well, change the bank accounts. Maybe just leave a nominal amount in them, but for the rest of their money and people's life savings, move it to another bank that can't be.
Well, what I've done, Bob, is I bank with RBC as well, and I opened up I just via online opened a savings account, a high interest savings, and I moved the lion's share of my money that I had in my checking account into that, and I left, like you said, just a nominal amount in the checking account. So I don't know that you have to switch banks, but because by switching bank by creating another bank account, they wouldn't have that information on that new bank account.
I wouldn't bet on that. In fact, you could be betting your life savings on that.
Why do you say that? Why do you say that?
Well, the couple in Eastern Passage, they were traced to by Equifax or whatever, the credit rating, and money was borrowed on that. First thing you do is get your bank to put stops on anything like that happening, and you register with Equifax or whoever. But you should change your bank account. There's no chance of anybody getting...
You can change your bank account, but you don't have to change your bank, to my knowledge.
Yeah, but they can phone in pretending that they're you and asking for your information or whatever. They're pretty smart guys, these guys.
Yeah.
And they can, and they have done. They can trace your bank account. And if you've opened a new account, well, good luck to you. It may work, but I think I'd rather prefer that my money is now with Toronto Dominion than it was with Royal Bank. And when I went in there and asked them what they could do to protect us, the banks should have all got together and put stops on everybody's accounts. Make sure there's extra security from your bank. And I went in and asked the manager, what are you doing? And was told, well, what do you want us to do? I was aghast that would be the attitude of RBC. Every bank in Nova Scotia should be together and coming up with a policy to make sure, at least, to tighten our defence. Nothing's impenetrable, but let's make a good job of it.
Well, that said, Bob, people still have regular transactions that they need to conduct, and banking does require some risk. No matter what, you're never going to be completely risk-free.
Well, I'm not going to put my life savings at risk, and I'm leaving a nominal amount so that I can pay cable TV and whatever else in Royal Bank of Canada, and the rest of it is gone. There's only me and the wife knows where our money is now, and there's no way I'm leaving it at risk. And I would strongly advise people out there listening to your show to do that, because it's the only way to make almost absolutely secure that they can't trace you to a new bank account. It's simple as that. There's no way it can be done.
Okay, thanks for the call.
Yeah, thanks for your show.
Take care. All right, 902-405-6000. Like I said, I opened a savings account, and to me, they would not have that information. There'd be no way they could get that information. If they called and tried to pretend that they were me, they would know that anyway. I don't know. Look, folks, you can go crazy trying to protect your money and your finances. Like I said, this is going to become a full-time job, just protecting your identity. It's the world we live in now, folks. It really is tough. It's a tough world we're living in right now. Sometimes I just shake my head. 902-405-6000. You got to ask yourself the question: what the hell is coming next? James, hello.
Hi, calling about Nova Scotia Power.
Sure.
So, for the record, as many people will know, including you, it's a monopoly, but it is a regulated monopoly. It is subject to all sorts of statutes and regulations and the Utility and Review Board, whatever it's called now. So I would suggest you invite both the president of Nova Scotia Power and the minister responsible. I think it may be James Lohr, the Minister of Finance, John Lohr, because he is listed as the minister responsible for the Utility and Review Board Act. They haven't updated the name of the act, even though they've updated the name of the Regulatory Commission. And I'm so glad you're having Wayne McKay on Monday to explain all this to us. Anyway, we've heard enough about all the problems. It's a mess, but the mess can be cleared up with appropriate action by all parties who have the power, small p parties, including the president of the company and the minister responsible, because this is crazy. I have not received a letter, but I guess I'm expecting to receive one, so to speak. But they're putting hundreds of thousands of Nova Scotians through the ringer because of an egregious error by Nova Scotia Power. Like someone has to be held accountable.
Yep, people want accountability for sure. They absolutely do. And like you said, the fact that this is a monopoly is makes it even worse.
Yes, the government decided to grant, again, governments, but the government of Nova Scotia in due course decided to grant this company a monopoly. What with privilege comes responsibility.
Yep, that's right.
They have to act in the public interest and in the interest of their customers. And sometimes it's complicated, and I'm not, but on the other hand, their handling of this affair seems to be a bit cavalier.
Absolutely cavalier. I would say reckless and irresponsible would be my definition.
Well, okay, you're upping the game here, but yes, they have not taken it. They have not understood what's going on with their customers, because now people have to. Nova Scotia Power made a huge mistake, and the responsibility for the next 2 years is on their customers to call into credit union or credit monitoring. And anyway, it's and I hope you could maybe get both of them on. That'd be fun.
Right. Okay, James, thanks for the call.
Thank you.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls, 902-405-6000. Joe, hello.
Good day, Todd. How are you?
I'm well, you?
I'm sorry I screwed up. I promised myself I wouldn't ask you how you are. You must get that 40 times in one day's call.
That's all right. I don't mind. It's look, people are on hold and they're waiting, and then suddenly I jar them, and the brain has to catch up to what's going on, and that's just a natural response. No problem.
My question is, this is no exaggeration, has been on my mind ever since the government privatized Nova Scotia Power. And now my fears have come to fruition. I'm one of those people, I do not do anything online. I don't even have a computer or a smartphone, and I don't want the damn things. But I'd like to know if anyone out there can answer the question, or you. I can't recall who the incumbent government was at the time that this transaction took place. Do you know?
Which transaction are you talking about again?
Privatizing Nova Scotia Power.
Oh, I see. Yeah, it predates me. I moved to the area about 7 years ago, so I don't know. I don't know that, but I'm sure that many people listening right now do know. I don't know if it was Rodney McDonald or John Hammer. I'm not sure. I don't know.
Okay. So I'd like to put a request out there, and I'm very skeptical about government, extremely, maybe cynical.
Yeah.
And I don't trust human behavior. And you give an opportunity to humans, and we tend to go the path of least resistance, and that's the most profitable for us. Nova Scotia Power, it's time for the government to step in and maybe take it back, maybe bring it back into the fold of the provincial government, because this organization has been given such leeway in milking every ounce of financial gain out of this company. They get what, 9%? Guaranteed 9%?
Guaranteed. I think it's 8 point something, upwards of 9%. Yeah.
That was horribly incompetent on the part of the government who allowed this transaction to go through, and we're paying the price for it today. And they started near the bottom. Now they've gone into the toilet. And I'd like to know what government was in power. And someone might say, well, that's not relevant anymore. It sure as hell is to me. I'm angry that they allowed this to happen, and they've been milking us ever since. So I think and I'm a big fan of Mr. Houston, a big fan. I think it's time his posse got on board and broke this thing down, did a little analyzation, and maybe, as I say, take it back under government jurisdiction. Their behavior is abysmal. Anyway,
okay.
Anyone out there that knows who the government was at the time, I'd appreciate them sharing that with you.
Okay, fair enough, Joe. Take care. I'm not sure. Again, it predates me. A quick Google search would come up with that answer pretty quickly. 902-405-6000. Cheryl, hello.
Hello, Todd. How are you?
I'm well, you?
Good. So I got one of those letters that there was a breach.
Yeah.
So I decided to give them a call yesterday, and they, you call the general line. It says if you are calling for the breach, press this number. But then you actually have to be transferred to their billing department if you want to know anything. Like I asked them, because I had a pre-authorization in 2020, but I took it off because I will tell people that it's safer to pay it as a bill through your bank personally, because then they don't have your account information. If you cancel the pre-authorization, the information is destroyed. But they could not tell me about the social insurance number because 7 years back, somebody moved and I had to get it in my name, so they had to run a credit check. And of course, I thought I had to give them my SIN number. So they can't tell me a yes or no if they had that information on file. I suspect they have it on file. As to why they kept it 7 years, potentially, that bothers me. I'm not changing bank accounts. I'm not putting a fraud block on because that impacts me if I'm out somewhere and I want to take advantage of a promotion, or if I want to apply for a credit card. It's just a big hassle to me personally. I wish there was a way to lock address changes, phone number changes, bank account number changes, so that someone couldn't take over and have money transferred to an outside account, or apply for, do their income tax and have it sent to a different bank account. That's my thoughts on the subject.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks, Cheryl.
Okay, bye.
All right, appreciate the call. 902-405-6000. Elizabeth, hello.
Oh, good morning.
Hi.
I heard you talking about our money in the bank and how we're really not safe with our money, even if we change bank accounts. Because you know what? I don't know if you knew it, but I mean, I read up on it that when the truckers had the Freedom Convoy, Mark Carney was the one that freezed their bank accounts.
No, Mark Carney didn't freeze their bank accounts. He wasn't in government at the time.
That's a rumor. But anyway,
well, it's not true. It's not true. He wasn't in government at the time.
Well, the government did freeze the
yes, the government did, but
account.
Mark Carney was not a member of government at that time.
No. Okay. But anyway, so what I'm saying is when the Harper government was in, the C-15 section so-and-so, don't know the exact section, the government has the authority to go into your bank account. They have the authority. So how do they get our bank account numbers, I wonder?
Well, I don't know. That's CRA, I suppose. I don't know. That's a good question.
Oh, yeah. They did it in Europe years ago. The government cleaned out people's bank accounts, right? But the government has the authority.
Yes, it does.
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I tell you our bank account. So you know what I do? I take my money out as soon as it goes in the bank.
Okay. Thanks, Elizabeth.
I pay cash for everything.
Okay, thanks a lot. Appreciate the call. I don't think that we can go and develop a society where we're hoarding money in our house anymore. I don't know that we're stuck with the monetary system in the way that it's constructed. We're stuck to deal with it, unfortunately. Ryan, hello.
Good day, Todd. I know you're well.
Yes.
Just a curiosity question. When did Nova Scotia Power start asking for your social insurance number? Because I signed up for my account about 10 years ago now, and I don't remember providing them with a social insurance number. Now, the one thing I do notice, because I got my request to connect right up here in front of me. The things that they asked me 10 years ago was my name, my email, my phone number, the address I'm currently living in, the address I'm trying to connect to, and person like a emergency contact, basically. Mm-hmm. And then the only other thing that was kind of a little weird is they wanted, not weird, I guess, but they want to agree to a credit check. Now, when they do a credit check, does it just check your credit, or does it pull up other information from you as well when you agree to that? Do you know?
I don't know. I don't know what they peruse or what they scour. I don't know.
Yeah, so like I said, I'm just curious on when they started asking for social insurance numbers when people went to connect there, because I received my letter as well saying that I was breached also. So I'm just curious on like I said, when they started doing that, and like everybody else, what's the reason for it?
Yeah, it seems to me that
they need that?
Well, some people they have provided social insurance numbers, others haven't. I've received a lot of emails from people who say that they've done that, and others haven't. I can't remember, quite honestly, whether I provided a social insurance number or not. And why do they need that? That's a good question. That's a real good question, Ryan.
Yeah, I'll just put one more quick point here, and I know you're running out of time here,
okay.
But I have a friend that lives down in a wonderful little town in the valley called Berwick.
Yes.
And he pays his bill to Berwick Power, I believe it's their term. Now, I don't know if they're connected with the mayor of Nova Scotia Power at all, but I don't know why in the heck other places in Nova Scotia don't do their own substations and try to get themselves off the monopoly like the town of Berwick is doing out there.
Yeah, for
It'd
sure.
It'd be kind of neat to see if someone knows the logistics of how Berwick Power works there. I'd love to hear that also and see I don't know if there's any loopholes that they have to go through, or if it's all legit and they're paying actually to Berwick and ignoring the mayor completely.
Yeah.
Because the mayor they don't have you in mind. They have their shareholders in mind. They're a corporation, and they're doing pretty all right in the stock markets right now. I'll say right quick.
Indeed. Okay, Ryan. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it.
Have a good one, bud.
All right, take care. We didn't get to all of you for that. I apologize. Lots of people want to talk about this Nova Scotia Power situation. Again, I'll continue to push Nova Scotia Power every day to Peter Gregg on the show, the CEO, who has done other media and has declined to do our show for whatever reason. And you can speculate all you'd like as to what those reasons might be. But Peter Gregg, I will treat you fairly as I try and do everybody. But come on the show and be accountable to your customers and to ratepayers and to our listeners that deserve to hear you respond to my questions. Again, we will continue to push for this on a daily basis. And thanks for the calls, everybody. This story, number of reported bed sores in Nova Scotia hospitals soaring. This when we come back.
Facts.
I saw the story on the CBC website. Number of reported bed sores in Nova Scotia's hospitals soar. Province says it's counting instances differently. Patient advocate says bed sores should not happen at all. Kathy Kovacs Burns is chair of the Patients for Patient Safety Canada. Kathy, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
For having me.
All right. So, yeah, this is a very difficult story, and statistics and all that goes with it tell a lot of the story, but the human story and the human component of it, I think, can often get lost when we deal with statistics like this. And I think that's important that we don't lose sight of the fact that these are real people dealing with this.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the issues with pressure injuries is that it's not just a financial cost, as we often think about. There's a huge cost to individuals who suffer from pressure injuries, as well as their families and caregivers, and those who might be looking after them, even at home or long-term care facilities, when they are discharged from hospital. So there are a lot of factors to consider with pressure injuries.
Okay, so what can you tell us about what's happening here in Nova Scotia and the data, and what can you tell us about this?
Well, I think it's good that there is some discussion about the data. It is so important to monitor and track incidents like pressure injuries. Otherwise, you have no idea of just what you're dealing with and then what to do about it. And so there's good sides to data, and there's also the bad side. The bad side, of course, is that we know that the incidents seem to be rising and rising rapidly. It hasn't de-escalated at all over the years, about 20% increase on average per year across the country, let alone in Nova Scotia perhaps. But it is something to take note of. But I do believe that it's good that there is that monitoring and tracking. It's sad that it is going up and escalating, but that means that something has to be done and some strategies need to be put in place. It's a multi-level approach that needs to be taken from all the way from government being aware of it and public being aware of it. And certainly at the practice level, what do we do better about education and continually changing our practices to improve the prevention of pressure injuries?
All right, and a lot of this is obviously ties in with the human resources component and those working in healthcare and in long-term care or whatever it might be, and their workload and the fact that the work is tough and it's long hours. So the human resources side of it is a part of the story, I'm sure, right?
Absolutely. It is a huge factor. There's no doubt that, when you have a complement of staff that can actually attend to patients and do proper assessments, daily assessments who are of patients in hospital or even long-term care facilities, they're able to do those assessments and determine if there's any breakage of skin and then follow up. But when people are running, they're short-staffed in facilities, and that means that they have to prioritize, and oftentimes some things get left undone or not attended to as they should be, and unfortunately pressure injuries falls in that category.
Okay, and tell us about how they're measured, because there's stage 3 and 4 bed sores. What's the measuring process here?
Well, so there is a skin measurement that can be done, an assessment to look at the skin. And so you're determining coloration, you're determining pressure points, you're determining a number of factors for the individual, and whether or not there is any skin breakage, so starting with stage 1. If it progresses to stage 3 or 4, those are wounds. Stage 4 is very complex in that it can actually be as deep as going through the tissue and muscle and even hitting the bones. So the assessments are extremely important to be done on a regular basis, particularly with clients or patients who are high risk, and not just the elderly who are frail, but also children. Or those who have conditions like spinal cord injuries, so and sitting for a long period of time or laying for a long period of time. So these things are very important as part of our routine assessment.
Yeah, and of course, with our aging demographic and the need, we know that this is only going to expand. So we need to get best practices put in place, or the problems will continue to happen. Right? It's just math.
That's correct. Yes, we do need to have proper education of all the healthcare providers and teams, and even some awareness with patients and families to be aware that when they are frail or they have conditions, medical conditions, or at risk, what are those risk factors that they should be aware of, and then try to initiate the practices that are going to prevent pressure injuries from occurring.
I was going to ask you about the family and what family's roles can be in all of this. And obviously, being an advocate for your loved one is good, but it's difficult as well. So what role do families have here?
Well, families can play a very important role. We often will look at families as taking on a lot of the responsibility for their loved ones, whether it's in hospital, if they're able to be there, or whether it's at home or even the long-term care facilities. But they're almost a second hand of the healthcare providers. They can take up a lot of the the initial kind of work with their loved ones. So I don't say that we necessarily the assessments, but they can be. They can be involved with healthcare providers to do that assessment, to observe and be aware. Certainly with moving the mobility of patients. So if somebody is bedridden, they can actually assist with repositioning patients in bed or in wheelchairs or chairs. So yes, they have a role to play, and they are that second arm. They can take on a lot of things if they're willing to do that. I can't say everyone is willing, and that's okay, but those who are can actually take on quite a bit of the responsibility and feel that they are contributing, and they want to contribute. They really do. So I think that they play a major role.
And awareness and conversations like this are important for obvious reasons.
Yes. I mean, all these conversations are important. I mean, we do know that pressure injuries are preventable, first of all. So any awareness that we can actually get out there across the board, with the public, with patients and families, with all healthcare providers at all levels of care and care settings, and even with leadership and government. I think that this is something that we need to be promoting a lot more, because it is preventable for the most part. And we can do something about it. There are different strategies, approaches, devices that we can put in place. So, and it certainly there is a cost, for the treatment in hospital. That's the other thing that we need to be aware of. So, what are we prepared to spend or time to take for prevention, which is less expensive than really the cost that it takes for treatment, especially for stage 3 and 4.
Kathy, good chat. Appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
All right, take care. Kathy Kovacs Burns, Chair of Patients for Patient Safety Canada. Here's a quick email I wanted to read from Colin, who's a regular listener and sends me regular emails, and I always appreciate it. And it's regarding Nova Scotia Power and the hacking. He said, I heard you ask what's next with regard to protecting your information. So right now, if you have something password protected, hackers can brute force guess your password. Basically, they train a computer to guess all possible combinations to figure out your password. That's why using a single word like a password or password one is a bad idea. They can break that in seconds. This is why they suggest using uppercase and lowercase numbers and symbols. It goes from seconds to guess to hundreds of thousands of years. But here is what's coming next, quantum computing. And while quantum computing isn't going to be available to run to the run-of-the-mill hackers, it will be one of those things that state-sponsored hackers like Russia, Iran, and North Korea will access. Quantum computing will be able to guess the complicated passwords and even bypass encryption. The things that would take hundreds of thousands of years would take hours for quantum computer to guess. That's the future waiting for us. Our best protections for government departments and private industries will basically be useless once quantum computing is available. And he suggests that I talk to Rob Thacker about this, and indeed I will. And it's sobering. It's a sobering world we live in. Like I said, it's just one thing after another. I hate to be a doom and gloom guy on a Friday. But, yeah, that's troubling indeed, for sure. All right, we talk a lot of sports on the show. Well, there's a vibrant football community here in the province as well. We're going to get to the bottom of all that when we come back.
Thanks.
All right, there's a very vibrant football community and lots going on in the football world. I'm not talking soccer, I'm talking football, North American football. So joining us to talk about all this is Rob Suffron, the president of Football Nova Scotia. Rob, thanks for joining the show.
Hey, Todd. Thanks for having me.
Indeed. All right. So, yeah, the Maritime Football League, established in 2001. We've got participation in that. Women's football has been around since 2004. First women's tackle football league in Canada. And in addition, we've got lots of teams, U14, U16, U18, U19, and all the high school levels as well. We've got Elite Flag Nationals coming up in Kingston. So lots to talk about here when it comes to football.
Yeah, where do you want to start? There's all kinds of stuff we can go over.
All right, let's talk the Maritime Football League first off. This is a league that's been around since 2001. And who does that provide? That provides people who, I guess, age out of other leagues?
Yeah, it provides an opportunity for people that are no longer playing high school football. There are some AUS varsity athletes that play in it, as well as people from the AFL, which is the Atlantic Football League, so like a smaller college level, and senior men that used to play but still want to get after it.
How many teams do we have from the area in the Maritime Football League?
Nova Scotia has two, the Halifax Heat and the Nova Scotia Buccaneers. And I believe the Buccaneers won the Maritime Championship last year. Yeah, they did.
Okay, and when's the season?
The season's ongoing right now, so it goes kind of April to May. I think it's 8 weeks of regular season, then playoffs.
Mm-hmm. And what are the venues?
They play all over Nova Scotia and New Brunswick, so I know that they play at St. Mary's sometimes. They play over at Harborview in Dartmouth, and they play at Rocking Stone in Moncton.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and let's talk about the women's side of it as well. The women are participating in tackle football as well, right?
Yeah. The Halifax Explosion is the women's team, and I think there's 3 teams in that league. And then they send kind of an all-star team to some of the national competitions, like a combined team of the New Brunswick, Nova Scotia teams make up a team for the Maritime provinces and that compete at different Football Canada events.
Okay, what's this? Obviously, it means a lot for the players to participate, but tell us about some of the experiences that you hear from people who are able to continue to play football after, again, normal under other circumstances they would not have.
Yeah, I hear all kinds of great things about the Maritime Football League and the Women's League. I know the Maritime Football League, you've got guys that often may not have gone to the next level after high school that were really good athletes, and maybe university wasn't their thing, and they're just looking for a way to keep playing. And I coach at Acadia, and I know we've got some former players that play in the league. And, they just love the camaraderie of it. Yeah, there's the banging and clashing that happens with football, and obviously that feels differently when you get older. So I hear some of those war stories as well. But they really just love the community and, the involvement to stay as part of the team with football.
Indeed. All right, let's talk about the youth, the under 14 up through under 19 leagues or teams.
Okay, so we've got provincial teams in both tackle and flag, and the National Elite Flag Championships actually just took place a week and a half ago in Kingston.
Okay.
And like Nova Scotia last year, we won the U18 National Championship, and we were able to defend it again this year. We sent 7 teams, both men and women's, and we medaled in 4 of the events, which was outstanding. There's not a huge population in Nova Scotia, and flag football right now is so much growth and so exciting that we actually compete and win at the national level. And it's a great opportunity for people that don't want to or don't play tackle, or they play both disciplines because the seasons are different, and it just gets time for them to hone their skills and kind of work on their craft.
Yeah, indeed. So when's the season for the flag football?
It's going on right now. So we have flag football in Metro. We've got flag football in the Valley. We've got flag football in Truro, in Sydney, in Bridgewater. So we're kind of spread out throughout the province, but there's a real big concentration in Metro. And, we've got almost 2,300 participants in flag this time of year in Nova Scotia.
All right, so this all falls under the umbrella of Football Nova Scotia. They're all under your umbrella, correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, so people are listening and they're interested and they want to know more about all of this. They can get all the details and all the information they need by visiting your website, I'm assuming?
Yeah.
Okay, so the website is what?
footballnovascotia.ca.
Okay, simple as that. Rob, thanks for the time. Appreciate it. And sounds like it's a lot going on and good stuff. Thank you.
Great, Todd. Thanks.
All right, take care. Rob Suffron, president of Football Nova Scotia. And again, the flag football is a good option for those who have concerns or they don't want to play tackle football, which would be, I would think, quite a few people who love the game but don't want to have that physical contact for a variety of reasons. And also, it again, look, there's a lot of men and women out there who like the full contact sport, and looks like they are providing all of those opportunities for all those people. Think about all the people that played high school football and perhaps played AUS football and want to continue to play. It's like a lot of hockey players, right? That's why the senior hockey league often fills that void for people who have aged out or no longer playing university hockey or hockey at an elite level. Senior hockey is fantastic hockey, usually. Senior hockey, by the way, doesn't mean seniors hockey. That's not what it means. All right, I want to read a quick email concerning Nova Scotia Power. This one from Patty. Patty says, just my experience, I've received the dreaded letter from Nova Scotia Power. I signed up for TransUnion as per their instructions. However, upon trying to sign in to the account the next day, it states my username and password are not recognized. I've tried calling TransUnion, but to no avail, as the recording keeps saying how busy they are, and you can press 1 to stay on the line, 2 to receive a call back. Also, I have tried calling Nova Scotia Power only to get a recording stating how busy they are and that I can call back later. Fat chance they're also of getting through. It's a joke what they expect us to do because of their failures. I feel sorry for elderly or people not savvy enough to navigate this ordeal. And that's a good point. Excellent point. All right. And coming up in the next half hour, we're going to talk a little music because there's a pretty big event coming up here in Halifax. Halifax Music Fest with Lenny Kravitz and Nickelback and other big headliners. We'll chat with one of the organizers of that. Also, weekend weather with Allister Aalders, talk sports with Cecil. All that coming up. We'll be back.
Facts.
All right, we've got a pretty big event coming up here in Halifax. It's called Halifax Music Fest. Goes June 27th to the 29th, and some headliners in which you will definitely recognize. Louis Thomas is the owner and president of Sonic Concerts. Joins us to discuss this. Louis, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, Todd. Appreciate an outlet to chat about it.
All right, so let's talk about the headliners, if you will, please. It's a good place to start, right?
Yeah, so June 27, Nickelback, June 28, Lenny Kravitz, and June 29, the Pillars.
All right, so what's it like to line up this type of talent? Must be a real feather in your cap, or it must be rewarding to get this type of talent to come here?
Yeah, I mean, it's, we get asked, okay, what does it take to do this, and where does the idea come from? I mean, the idea frankly comes from walking around here, and then also when I don't know if you go see a lot of shows, but we end up in a situation where we're traveling to go see a lot of shows, and just sort of felt like the peninsula of Halifax is a great location to host a show that you can walk to. You can ensure that you're sort of experiencing downtown, making sure you're contributing to the rest of the nighttime economy here. And it was just, like, why can't we do it here? It's sort of about like a bit of a wish list, but wishing, frankly, doesn't work. You need to start doing. So, it feels great to get it done. It feels great to sort of start what we hope will become an annual event. It is a lot of work from a lot of people. It's not as simple as just sort of getting a couple of artists done. There's a lot of logistics. There's a lot of people to get mobilized just for one artist, let alone the 4 per night. It feels good to sort of almost have it done, and and then have an opportunity to sort of talk about it and amplify it as much as possible. That's a good thing.
Yeah, and of course the venue is great. And what's the capacity? What's the numbers in which you're hoping to hit here?
I mean, we're still tweaking capacity because we have to have a section for all ages, section for VIP, section for 19 plus. So we'll probably hit around 22,000. Nickelback's very close to that number already because obviously they were announced first. They're big numbers. Big show. Massive stage, massive production. Every artist will show up with 4 or 5 trucks of production just for their headline show. So it's significant. And to your point, that venue is fantastic. It's a natural amphitheater in the heart of the city. We're really excited about it.
Yeah, for sure. And when it comes to costs and putting this type of thing on, I would think that pretty big costs here, and hence you're hoping for a big return with people taking part and buying tickets.
Yeah, I mean, the reality is, as I've said to many people, the success here will be defined by not losing any money and having a safe experience for everyone, all the music fans in HRM, obviously, and beyond. Just sort of relay to everyone there is, just be a host, be a host for your other audience members and show off, what we can do here, be proud of the city. I think that's going to be really key here in turning this into an annual event.
How much are tickets?
Tickets tier a little bit, sort of like, people hear lots of demand ticketing. So that's, we're in the same process. So depending on the state of demand for a certain show, it's just about $160 to VIP would be north of $250. So it depends on which section you want, and then it would depend on the demand of each show. But every show is sold as an individual ticket. We're not doing a weekend festival type pass ticket just because we knew we would have different talent on obviously different nights or different type of talent. So we just ran an individual show ticket.
Well, it sounds pretty reasonable when you think about the amount of money that tickets to recent concerts have cost, upwards of much more than that, hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So pretty reasonable, really, when you think about it, when you're getting.
Yeah, I mean, again, back to my earlier point, we get in our car, we drive to the airport, we get on a $600 plane ticket, we get a $400 hotel room in Toronto, and it's a $2,000 bill by the time you come back. So, I agree. We're obviously trying to find that fine line between covering the costs and ensuring that it's cost effective if you locally live here as well. So that piece is tricky, but these are internationally renowned headliners, plus the supports they're all significant artists in their own right for the openers. So we feel good about where we are, like I said.
Right. Okay, if people want to know more, they want to get tickets, all that good stuff, they can just Google Halifax Music Fest, or what's the best way to direct them to the best way to
go? That works, what you just suggested, or just directly to the website, halifaxmusicfest.com, and all the information will be there.
Okay, Louis, sounds like it's going to be a big success, and best of luck, and let's pray for good weather, right?
Exactly. 3 days like we just had would be awesome.
Yeah, there you go. Okay.
Appreciate you having me on, Todd.
Okay, Louis, take care. Louis Thomas, owner and president of Sonics Concert. Speaking of weather, boo! Hiss!
So is that the order now?
Boo! Hiss! Allister, what are you doing? Come on.
I don't even know what to say. I mean, we had some great weather this week, but just like the last several weeks, it's fleeing for the weekend.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, it's very unfortunate. I mean, we've talked about we need this balance in our weather with nice sunshine, but also some rainier periods. But we just can't seem to shake the wet weather moving through during the weekend. And unfortunately, I mean, the weather's going to clear up a bit today, but there's more wet weather in the weekend forecast. I don't want to...
Well, just get it over with. Rip the Band-Aid off.
Just rip the Band-Aid off?
Right.
Well, okay. So if you have, plans outdoors, I think the soggiest weather will be Saturday. There's going to be quite a bit of cloud cover, not many opportunities for sunshine, fog in the morning retreating to the coast, and then showers developing later in the morning, continuing in the afternoon. Maybe a few embedded downpours, a risk of a thunder shower. And temperatures cooler than what we've been experiencing, in the mid-teens generally. That tapers off to a lingering chance of showers Saturday night, and then some uncertainty still for Sunday. It looks like there will be a window of perhaps at least dry weather early in the day, but then another round of showers expected later in the morning to at least the first part of the afternoon. And then later in the afternoon to evening, it's expected, at least right now, that those showers will taper off and we'll see a bit of partial clearing. So like the last several, it's not an entire washout, but I know people just want wall-to-wall sunshine or wall-to-wall dry conditions both days, and unfortunately we just can't seem to get that up right now.
We take one day at this point.
Just one day at this point.
We would take an afternoon at this point. Okay, so don't try and blame us. It's not our fault. Huh?
I'm trying to find, some silver linings here, but it's tough because people obviously they're trying to plan, any activities that they want to do outdoors around the weather, and it's a bit tough when, obviously Saturday you get a pretty good picture of it's looking pretty showery, especially, later morning and afternoon. That's, somewhat of a write-off for certain outdoor plans. Mm-hmm. But then, on a day like Sunday where it's not a washout, but there's some showers, there's a lot of planning that has to go into a day like that. So you really have to dissect the forecast from just, mainly cloudy with the chance of showers. It really comes down to the timing, which is, it's crucial any time of the year. But, when we get into this time of year, the late spring and summer, the weekend weather is really, really important. Yeah. And people, they're going camping for the weekend. They're working in their gardens. They just want to spend time outdoors, and it's challenging, especially when we just had such a great stretch of it was warm. Maybe some would consider hot, but it wasn't humid this week, and it was nice and sunny for. We had
2 days, bud. That's not a stretch of weather. That's a blip.
I would argue, 3. Yeah, I would argue 3. We had Tuesday, Wednesday, and more cloud in the mix yesterday, but it was still warm and it was dry. I'd argue 3.
Okay, all right, I'll take it.
The weather pattern we've had, that is a stretch these days, right? I know the stretch would be maybe 5, but these days that's what it is. But just unfortunately some more showery weather in the forecast.
I'm only razzing you.
I know.
It's all in good fun.
Oh, yes, of course.
And when all is said and done, it's not the end of the world. And people are dealing with much worse, including forest fires in Western Canada, and there's a forest fire I've heard here in the province.
In Framboise, Richmond County, in Cape Breton. It does not take a lot, even though we had a cooler pattern last week and quite a bit of showery weather much of May. It doesn't take long for things to really dry out when, you have still some dry vegetation trying to come into full leaf. There's also issues with dry, dead brush and trees on the ground from past storms. But a big concern this time of year. I mentioned it was pretty warm and in some cases hot. Some places did climb up to near 30 degrees this week, but there was no real moisture in the air. It was very dry. The relative humidity was low. The actual moisture count in the air was very dry. So when you get warm temperatures, the air is just so dry, and it's the wind picks up in the afternoon. It really does not take a whole lot for a wildfire or a grass fire to spread if it does become ignited. So it's even though we've had this damper weather pattern, it does not take a lot for things to really get going at this time of year. And we might not like the humidity in the summer because of how muggy it gets, but that really does help keep fire weather conditions lower than this time of year, just because the amount of moisture in the air can help limit the spread of fires. But yeah, this is why the typical peak wildfire season in our neck of the woods is, through May and June, just because, we're getting into the hotter weather, but the air is so dry. We get windy afternoons, and then, we are dealing with the plants and trees all coming into full leaf that really dry out quickly until we get into, later June and through the summer.
Okay, and about a minute or less, just quickly on the summer forecast, if you will.
Yeah, so the Weather Network put out their outlook for the summer, and they're forecasting a warm and humid summer, but also a wetter than normal summer. They're attributing that to more periods of showers and thunderstorms. Environment Canada is also predicting a warmer than normal summer. They're predicting near normal rainfall, but their rainfall prediction has a lower skill than temperature, so there's not as high of confidence in their rainfall outlook compared to, I'm not sure, the methodology of the Weather Network, but, would not be surprised to see that average temperatures, trend warmer and end up on the warmer side throughout the summer. The rainfall, I think, is going to be more variable. I do think we will see this pattern somewhat evolve, but I do think it'll be, we'll be dealing with certainly some showery weather, at least for the next bit, and then hopefully we get some more balance in the forecast where, we do need rain through the summer, but we also need some nice sunny days.
Okay, Allister, bring some good weather next week, for goodness sakes, please, okay?
I will really try. I mean, should I even bother coming in next week if it's going to rain on the weekend?
Yes,
but
we love you either way, bud.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks.
You got it. That's Allister Aalders, our weekend. I keep saying that. Our weather specialist. Wake up, Todd. Sports with Cecil when we come back. All right, time to talk sports with our sports guru, Cecil Wright. Cecil, Edmonton in Florida again. How the heck did that happen?
Yeah, I'm telling you right now, man. I all of Canada, of course, we're hoping for Edmonton so we can return the cup to a Canadian team. But man, Florida's tough. They've got a great team, and this could be just a heck of a series. I hope it is.
Yeah, but my, for Edmonton to go beat Edmonton or Dallas the way they did, which you have talked about, a great hockey team, and to dismantle them fairly easily, I think they got to have some severe wind in their sails and tons of confidence right now.
Well, I hope so. I do, but they are going up against the defending champions, and all the stigma that goes with that. And, I just hope that McDavid doesn't get hurt in this series because that Florida likes to target stars.
Well, if I'm Edmonton and I'm in the locker room, I'm saying, look, the Toronto Maple Leafs pushed these guys to 7 games. Surely to God we can beat them. Right?
The Toronto Maple Leafs have nothing to do with this. And I think Edmonton is living off their own laurels, and well, they should. They've had a great season. They're in the final, so they're doing a whole lot right. I would love to see a 7-game, man. Geez, wouldn't that just be super exciting?
Yeah, for sure. As long as Edmonton wins, right?
Yeah, I'd love that.
There you go. And Hyman's out. They'll miss him. That's a big part of their lineup, right?
That's a huge, huge minus right there. And, you can't replace a guy like that. Everybody else is just going to have to tighten things up a little bit and throw your best at Florida.
As Tkachuk, is he healthier? What's going on with Tkachuk? In the Leaf series, he didn't do anything at all.
Nah, I don't think he's healthy yet, but, he's a gamer, and, everybody would love to have that guy on their team. You can hate him when he's playing against you. He's like Marchand. You hate him when he's playing against you. You love him when he's on your team. And Tkachuk is certainly one of those players. And so is his brother, by the way.
Yeah.
They're both aggravating to play against, but you'd love to have them.
How do you always manage to slip in a Marchand reference anyway?
Well, give him credit. The guy is playing in the Stanley Cup final again.
I heard he's going to be a Leaf next year. Did you hear that too?
That will never happen. Don't go there now. Stop it.
Well, if he is, will you cheer for him as a Leaf?
He's not going to be, and no, I won't. How's that for honesty?
Okay, that sounds good. NBA, by the way, I forgot to razz you about your Celtics. What happened to the Boston Celtics? But nonetheless, the Knicks are in tough. Man, what is it with the Knicks and New York teams? And this is it pressure? What's going on with the Knicks?
Well, personally, I think the series is going to be over the next game. I think Indiana's going to win. I think Tyrese Halliburton is probably an up-and-coming superstar in the league. And he's a guy, just like Jason Tatum, made the Olympic team and hardly played a minute. Steve Kerr just didn't play those guys.
Yeah.
And now here he is. Here he is now. If they win the next game, he'll be in the finals. And, I think he can thumb his nose at Steve Kerr, as can Jason Tatum. And you're picking on my Celtics and not even mentioning that Jason Tatum went down with a torn Achilles. That's what happened.
Mm. Oh, sure. Excuses. Come on, Cecil. You're better than that, aren't you?
I will say this, though. The New York Knicks, unlike the Toronto Maple Leafs, even though they haven't been there in a long time, they're putting up a good fight, man.
Yeah, for sure.
They really are. This Jalen Brunson is quite the shooter. I love him.
And then the NBA's MVP is Canadian, which is something we didn't talk about last week.
Yeah. Shea Gilgeous-Alexander, and my goodness, did he ever earn it? You know what I didn't realize about him? I thought he was about 6'2", 6'3". The guy's actually 6'6". So, he's not afraid to go in there and rebound and do whatever he has to do to help his team. Total team player. Couldn't be prouder of him, and glad that he'll be representing us on our Canadian Olympic team, which is going to be pretty good, by the way.
There you go. And I'm looking, of course, I had to bring this up, and you know that I'm going to bring it up, the American League East standings.
Red Sox.
And the Red Sox suck, man. 9.5 games back. They suck.
I thought they were only 8.5 back.
No, it's 9.5. 9.5, my friend.
Well, the thing is, the Yankees are on fire, man. They're like 9-1 in their last 10 games, the hottest team in baseball.
Yep.
But I think that the Red Sox, they haven't played yet this year, by the way, which I think is ridiculous.
Yeah, that's strange.
But they're going to be playing. I think it's next weekend, and the Sox got to turn around. They've lost so many. They got swept by Milwaukee, all one-run games in extra innings. I mean, they're right there. Their bullpen's just been gagging, in the last inning.
Yeah, for sure. So you're agreeing that the Red Sox suck? Is that what you're telling me?
Well, right now they're not looking too good. Although they did call up the rookie Marcelo Meyer, who's been they batted the guy cleanup yesterday.
Yeah.
And he's been there for 3 games?
Yeah.
What's that tell you?
Well, they're desperate. They're desperate, obviously.
Yep.
All right. Before I let you go, anything local that you want to pass along to everybody?
Big baseball game tonight in the Nova Scotia Senior Baseball League. The Halifax Mets, the senior team, they used to be the Halifax Pelham Canadians. They're now the Halifax Mets playing the Metro Brewers. 2 teams representing Metro Halifax, and they don't get along. So it could be a good game.
All right, pal. Appreciate it. And we'll do it again next week. Love you too. We'll talk next week. Bye. Right. Take care. Cecil Wright, our sports guru. Well, thanks for listening, everybody. We appreciate it very much. And have a great weekend. I'd like to thank Vanessa Van Ness on the other side of the glass at the control boards, doing a fine job as always. We're back on Monday, 10 o'clock. See you then.